Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 99th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. Well, Patriots, I will be the first to admit that the last 96 hours has profoundly impacted me, probably in the same way that it has impacted each and every one of you. And I've wanted to take a few days to really pull myself together, do some spiritual soul searching, and spend some time in introspection and meditation and prayer with the Holy Spirit, and try to bring myself to an appropriate place to be able to respond effectively, truthfully, and with balance to the situation that we've seen now happening in the United States, and really, spawning off a phenomenon around the Western world. It is easy to feel justified in the rage and in the hurt and the loss. It is understandable and appropriate and a natural human response to feel indignation, even wrath, about what many of us happened to see on live television. For me, on this end, it was the first time that I've had the unprivilege of watching someone killed on live television since 9/11 of 2001. And it brought back memories of the effect that that had on the population of America and the entirety of the world. Over these last 72 hours, I've tried to spend a great deal of time beseeching the Almighty, attempting to understand and gain wisdom and clarity over these events and how they play into the broader awakening that humanity is clearly on. And while some of it is very obvious, and I think is a natural conclusion and a natural progression of Mr. Kirk's work, such as the unification around the idea of speech and faith, I think some of the effects that this has had on the consciousness of mankind are going to produce significant ripples in what we would call the spiritual medium out there, the underpinning of our physical reality, that will go on not just for weeks or months, but for years to come. As we look at this concept of unification, it really is a daunting concept. You have several billion people around the planet that are politically active with respect to their own cultures. You have an information ecosystem that for the first time allows these several billion people to connect about what they think, feel, and believe in each and every day in real time. But at the same time that you have that, you also have the diversity of opinion and the selfish motivation of each and every one of us. And sometimes we are selfish. I think we should admit that as we look in the mirror or as we listen to broadcasts like this, that murky those waters and that provide individuality and variety. And a certain amount of that is truly important. A certain amount of self-interest, for example, preserves one's life. But at the same time, an overabundance or an over and out of moderation balance of whatever is out there with respect to that broader consciousness can impede this concept of unification. And with the Charlie Kirk assassination that we saw on the 10th of September, tragic though it was, and it is terribly, terribly tragic, it has galvanized a unification gradient inside the broad consciousness of mankind that perhaps for the first time on full public display in such a unified fashion worldwide is about something more than political ideology. You have people rallying now, not only around their concepts of politics and their beliefs about what their societies should reflect and look like, but around the basic tenets and freedoms of what it means to be human, to be able to speak one's mind within the confines of whatever one is taught to be acceptable in one's culture and one's upbringing, to be able to practice one's faith without being accosted by it, or to understand how to move about and interact with the world with one's faith if one finds oneself in a hostile environment. It's about the freedom to choose, the freedom to say what's on one's mind, the freedom to take a position and to contribute to a broader expansion, a true diversity, which starts always in our thoughts. This was what Mr. Kirk believed and modeled and exemplified each and every day. And for the first time, Patriots, I have seen and witnessed over the last 15 years, for the first time, a galvanization of public momentum for the good that has the same type of energetic flavor, if you will, the same type of essence as the public momentum that was generated for the bad after September 11th, 2001. Charlie Kirk's death is not simply a loss of an individual. It's not simply a loss of a political pundit, an activist, or even someone that did a very good job reaching the youth. It is the loss of an inspiration to millions and millions and millions of people around the world. and a great deal of them are under the age of 31. As we look, Patriots, to the future, as we look at this concept of 4 to 6% being lost forever, I think we need to appreciate that that is more of a literal statement rather than an allegorical one coming from the entity online called Q. When this Great Awakening process begins to really accelerate publicly and begins to whip up within to its bandwagon and underneath its umbrella and wings, the broader general population from all sides of the political divide, you will only see 4 to 6% extreme fringe outliers exiled from society and not capable of waking up. That means that over 90% of the rest of us will be on a generally same page, a commonality of basic fundamental understandings and beliefs, what we would call objective parameters of social reality and social compact with one another when it is all said and done. You know, as I was going through the internet just a few hours ago, and I was sort of interacting with some of the vitriolic posts and some of the compassion and memoriam posts for Mr. Kirk, I was struck by one that I thought was going to be an absolute rant of terror, but turned out to be perhaps one of the more profound ones that I've ever seen. And I wasn't able to save the video at the time because I was involved in other personal activities and I didn't have my hands free to save it, and I don't remember the handle. I would bring it up to each of you if I could. But this individual was a young biological lady, clearly on the path to transitioning. I'm not sure if, there ever was a surgical intervention or even a medical one. She didn't say in the video, but it was obvious that she was doing her very level best to androgynize herself. She had a nose ring, pierced eyebrows, pierced ears, Monroe piercing on her lip, and she had, of course, that trademark blue hair. And many of you out there will recall that I have said a number of times a blue-haired caricature, a gaslit blue-haired leftist, may be in the camp of those that are 4 to 6% and lost forever. And I've made that claim a number of times, both on this program and on other programs, trying to drive home the same point, but using the contrasting example of the extreme fringe to help make that point. And I was humbled by the Spirit just a few hours ago as I watched this gaslit blue-haired leftist have a complete meltdown of identity on basically what amounted to live television. This person was caught between rage and sobbing. She was beside herself that her side had begun celebrating such wanton violence. She said that she always believed herself to be on the side of those most accepting and those willing to accept anyone, no matter their choices and no matter their condemnation and criticisms. And she said that if they are willing to lie about something this foundational to human coexistence, which is what all of us were supposed to be wanting, then they will lie and deceive us about anything. And she truly did not know what to do with herself, and she cut the video off rather abruptly. And I sat back, Patriots, and I realized in that moment that this Great Awakening journey, this spiritual pathway that we are all on, the same spiritual pathway that Mr. Kirk was an absolute lion for and was well known, not just in the United States, but clearly around the world for his success at it. That spiritual pathway is not constrained by cultural understandings, political ideologies, experiences across life, even though those experiences are real to us. They do not, we are more than just the sum total of our experiences, right? And that spiritual journey is capable of doing what many of us on the Anon and Awake Patriot side of the aisle feel ourselves unable to do, which is to reach these people in the way that really truly counts. All of my children means all of my children. And so, Patriots, as we look at the world ahead, as we look at what we do next, as we look at the irregular war that continues to play out right in front of our very eyes, as we address the anomalies and the inconsistencies that have arisen so far with respect to Mr. Kirk's assassination investigation, things from aircraft leaving airports without flight departure plans and very suspicious behavior while in the air, to the shooter actively being able to evade the entirety of federal and state law enforcement for a number of days now. As we look at all of these things, and we decide collectively, what next? Where do we go from here? I think we can draw solace and wisdom from Mr. Kirk's own words. Be courageous in our faith. Be willing to talk to one another. Be willing to treat the other side with dignity and respect, not always approval and acceptance or tolerance, but with dignity and respect and grace. And above all else, to model the life and the way of life that Christ himself lived and modeled for us many thousands of years ago. Mr. Kirk died for that model. And the best thing that patriots in the United States and around the world can do are to double, triple, and quadruple down on exactly that model and express it to the world in the kindest, firmest, and most resolute fashion achievable. This is the way forward. We will bring them into the fold. America will be unified again. The world will be unified with respect to its balance and its cultures. This is our Earth. Charlie Kirk died for that vision. We will keep it going forward. This is SGAnon. I'll be back with each and every one of you again soon in audio file 100 on the Q News Patriot. God bless everyone. Stay safe today. Thanks. Bye-bye.